Welcome everybody. Today's video is a little bit different. This is a post-game commentary. I decided to try out the black and purple Zephyr deck. Today I'm using a deck list from Cross AI. I will drop a link to the video that I pulled that from just to give credit to where I found the deck list that I am running. So essentially I ended up running into this player a few times while testing, so I'm just going to compile the footage with some commentary over these two games that we played. So we're going in, we went first, we have 3 Dawn. I figured going with the 2 blocker off the bat would be fine, and of course get that early game poke in to go ahead and kind of get some life off. We're both running dual color, so we both only have 4 life, which is interesting. The Sanji deck, I keep seeing it. I don't know if it's just people testing it or what it is, but I do keep seeing it quite a bit, actually, more than I would expect to in OP TCG Sim. But anyways, there's a lot of, with the Sanji deck, there's a lot of non-effect characters in order to proc the effect. So he's got the Tony Chopper and the Jimby out. I block off the Jimby and throw a counter because I figure it's good to keep the blocker early on for later in the game. Go ahead and use the Sasaki to counter the Sanji attack to get the coup, and going into this turn we now play the 4-cost Kuzan to go ahead and get a draw off. And from here I was trying to decide exactly what my next move should be, whether or not I should play a Suru since it is still kind of early game, and obviously I chose not to, and try to get something off his board, which we are successful with. And then we're going to go ahead and pass it on back over to the Sanji player. And from here we have the 4-drop Pacifista, no effect, again fits perfect with the Sanji deck. I think, yeah, I go in and I block that, and then I toss a Suru since I had 2. This Iron card, I never found a way to play it out of the 2 games here. Of course, I'm still early on testing with the deck. I'm not super familiar with all the lines, but I'm just kind of, I went into this completely blind. So I believe here I was trying to decide whether or not it was worth the Queen, which I think I do decide it is worth it since Queen is a blocker. And yes, it's kind of early to be returning a Dawn, but the card draw I felt was worth it. And with what's in my hand at the moment, I didn't feel that keeping the Ein was really going to be beneficial. I believe that's what I end up trashing. Yeah, I trashed the Ein. It was, I have 2K counters. I have the Borsellino for next turn. I have another 2-drop blocker. So I realize here the Kuzan maybe not the smartest thing to attack with, but at the same time I'm just trying to get things off the board or make my opponent use their resources early on, so that whenever I do go in for a bigger push in a later turn, they don't have as many resources available. Of course, they use the 3-sword style Onigiri and end up with the Shinobu on the field, which does, I believe, end up being a little bit of an issue for me the next couple of turns. Shinobu's a 5k, obviously normal, no effect, so, or vanilla if you want to go by the terms we use in TCGs. But ultimately at this point I'm not really too sure what my opponent is trying to figure out. Obviously 4 cards in hand. I believe they had 8 Dawn at this time, so I'm just playing the waiting game essentially, which is never fun to do. But you know, they can only have 2 more characters on the field. They're probably trying to figure out exactly which way to go about certain things, especially with me having the 6k blocker. Do they want to try to proc my blocker and chance me having the counters in the hand or not? Which obviously, as we can see, I do have plenty of counters, so I'm gonna go ahead and keep the Kuzan on the field. I think it would be beneficial, but then they stack up on the Shinobu to make it 8k, and honestly it's just go ahead and let the blocker go that may not be the best choice. Honestly, I'm doing a lot of learning with the game. I've been trying to play a little bit more, so some of these moves may not be optimal, and the plays are definitely, I'm getting better, but if you see anything I do wrong, please let me know in the comments what I should have done to play more optimally. So we now got 2 Borsellino in hand, the Tashigi and the Suru for the 2K counters. We've run into another Ein, surprisingly, and then we still have the 2-drop blocker, which I'm really not sure why I haven't gotten it on the field yet. But so I think right here, if I remember correctly, I'm going to go ahead and try to attack before I, put anything on the board, just to kind of maybe mitigate resources that they can use and things of that nature. So I go with the Borsellino, which I believe is the more optimal play. I don't have any events or anything, so I went with the 2 Borsellino play just because it's double blockers. Borsellino is really good, and I don't have to worry about event cards KOing that card off of the field. So from there, the Sanji player drops this Mihawk, which I have not seen anybody play up to this point. But this player really loves playing them, and it fits well with the deck. I understand why they did. And now they're trying to go for my leader with the Pacifista. And I believe my thought process here was, if I go for a blocker, it's easy. It makes more sense for me to throw a 2K counter off rather than having to use both of them. Oh, I wouldn't have had to use both of them. Never mind. He's only 6K. I was, for some reason, thinking he had built it up. So, goes in with the Shinobu, and I go ahead and block that, because I didn't feel it was worth losing another 2K counter just to save 1 Borsellino. We still have one on the board, which I felt is worthwhile for a moment like this, but I probably should have let that Borsellino stay on the field for at least another turn. We get the 3-drop Kobe, which we also draw into on this turn, which is fine. We can play one to remove something from the field. Honestly, I probably should have gone Suru to... No, the Suru would have only done -2, so the Mihawk would still be a problem. I believe the Shinobu's... I decided on the Shinobu because it's giving me more issues. It has the more base power than the Jinbe does. And here I believe I misplay because I used the card action, not thinking about the fact that I don't have a blocker on board. So I'm going to have to either lose a 2K counter or lose a blocker. And which, in hindsight, at this point, I'm late enough in the game and I don't have the Kuzan, the 10-drop Kuzan. I should have gone with the Suru play. And never mind, the Suru play wouldn't have worked because it only dropped again by 2. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened in this game. It was last night that I played it, and it's the next day when I'm recording this commentary. So why did I play the Suru? Oh, okay, the Suru play to be able to pop the Zephyr off, to go in for an attack, and this is still a questionable play, but I wanted to be able to remove more from the board while also going in to, again, remove a life and kind of even out the playing field. But that definitely cost me in the end because I do not have a blocker. We get the Hell's Judgment from the life, but I don't remember if I used the trigger here or not. I think I do because I don't have the Dawn to pretty much do anything with it. And at this point, I'd pretty much accepted that it was probably game, but go ahead and let it play through. And we lose. I will be right back with you with the next game. So we're jumping into the second game here. Again, we end up running into the same person, which is fine. That's kind of why this video ended up being the way it is. I did adjust a few things in the deck. In fact, I think this is actually the cross AI deck that I'm running here. I think the first deck was another deck list that I had found. I don't remember who that deck list was from. I'll link them in the description as well, though, just to give credit, obviously. So in this one we are using the 2-drop Garp. So we went second and we went ahead and got the Garp on field. I probably should have waited, but I just wanted to have something on the field. We go with the Kuzan right off the bat to go ahead and get the card draw, plus it's a good big body on the board. We go in to try to use a quick poke at the beginning, go ahead and get that first life off of the top of their thing. And then they rest my Kuzan with the Punk Gibson because of the trigger effect, which kind of sucked, to be honest with you. I wanted to be able to see something happen with the Kuzan, but it's still pretty early on in the game, so I'm not going to use my leader ability at that point. He stacks up on the Sanji in hopes of getting rid of the Kuzan. Obviously he does. So I guess he wanted to keep Izo on the board just to have a body, and Pacifista couldn't do anything that turn. We now have 6 Dawn, and I believe I'm going to go for the Queen play here just to get draws, if I remember correctly. That, or I may go for the Garp. No, I couldn't go for the Garp Smoker play because I was 1 Dawn under. So I believe... I'm not sure what I did here. Because even now that I'm looking at it, I know it's probably like obvious what should be done. The Queen's the play. Yeah, okay, so I went with the correct play here, I think, with the Queen. I could not decide what I wanted to trash, but I think the Thunder Bagao is what I ended up going with because I don't have under 2 life to utilize it. So, oh, I was thinking I had to trash a card. I was thinking about the second part of it. I forgot I needed to put the Dawn back in the Dawn deck. I throw the Smoker because I don't think I'll be able to utilize it, and I do have another one in the deck. So at this point, we'll try to poke real quick. Might as well. It doesn't hurt anything. Next turn we will have 8 Dawn. 7 Dawn because we put one back. So they go in for the quick poke. I use the blocker. I wasn't thinking about the fact that it's a 6k blocker and now it's rested and they have plenty of Dawn to stack up on their characters, and since they're not really using effects, they're free to just kind of stack up and make really big bodies, which I think is really cool with the Sanji deck. I think it's interesting to have a deck that doesn't rely on all these crazy effects and things like that. It's just refreshing to see, and I think that's kind of the case in most card games. Is it the best? Probably not, but it is fun. Zephyr, I believe, is a deck with potential if you know how to pilot it correctly. Obviously I went in blind. This was my first time playing the deck, so nothing's optimal, but regardless, the Sanji player was really cool to play against. There was another game before these two, but I accidentally deleted that footage and could not get it back. But it's okay. That game was very, very bad by me. So we sent the Sasaki as a counter to that Izo attack. The Sengoku is okay for the 2k counter, and if you have the Garp to pair with it, and can use the resources, I guess it's worthwhile. Personally, I've tried to use Sengoku with black a few times and it just never seems to work for me, but then again, maybe I'm not prepared to make that commitment for the resources. That's definitely a shortcoming on my end, is knowing exactly how to utilize my resources. There's a lot of games I'm sure you've seen from the other compilation videos where I can get down to that, you know, neither one of us have life left or we both have 1 life left, but I just I've shotgunned my resources, and at that point there's nothing else I can really do. So they countered with the 3 sword style again, and because of its effect they were able to get the Usopp onto the field for free. Well, I guess it wasn't totally free, but it was card advantage, because you play the card for the same cost the Usopp would have been. So the Yamato comes down, they tap the Garp, which does suck, but I'd rather it be the Garp, honestly, over the Sengoku. And we block with the Queen, the Izo into the Garp. If I remember correctly, I decide it's not worth keeping the Garp, mainly because I have the Borsellino in hand as well. But I'm definitely trying to make a decision here. So I did decide that the Garp was not worth it. Again, Borsellino's in hand for next turn. That sets me up pretty nicely. Also, we will have 9 Dawn in the next turn as well. They go for the 8k Usopp into my leader. If I remember correctly, because I don't have the 2 life to utilize Thunder Bagao, I didn't want to use it. The impact wave, they had no targets for the second half of that, so I decided I might as well go ahead and take the hit to the life, so it makes Thunder Bagao a little bit more active. And at this point we have the 7-drop King, and if I remember correctly, I end up going to the 7-drop King. We have the 10-drop Kuzan, but we're 1 Dawn short, I believe, because of a play earlier with the Queen. So I believe the play here is to use the King for its double pop abilities. Yeah, so I use the Sengoku to lower Yamato's cost, deploy the King, and again we do lose 2 Dawn, which puts us a turn back on the Kuzan, but we do get to clear their board, and they have limited resources in their hand at this point as well, so I felt it was worth it. I probably should have waited on that until after the 10-drop Kuzan was on the field, to be honest with you, in hindsight, because it would have been a lot easier and a lot less resources just for the double pop. But it's okay, because we do have the 10-drop Kuzan, so the kind of end goal of this deck is in sight, which is a lot better than what it was before. This dual battle, I don't quite know what we call them in One Piece, this match probably went on a little bit longer than it probably should have, just because of my choices. But again, you play, you learn, and that's the whole point of testing, and that's the fun I have with these videos, is I'm essentially just getting to test out a bunch of decks. Since I don't have them in real life at the moment, I'm getting a chance to kind of just jump in and test out a bunch of decks before I actually commit actual physical money to actual physical cards to be able to play with, because One Piece is not cheap. So we use the Queen, we draw into a second 10-drop. I know the 10-drop's coming up soon. The whole point of the Jack is to ramp up to get there a little bit faster. I probably should have played Jack at some point earlier, but at this point it was the best option in my opinion to trash for the Queen effect. We're going to go in and try to poke with the Zephyr, obviously not using its ability because we don't want to put off the 10-drop Kuzan any more than we already have. And essentially we're just going to keep going in and trying to do what we can. They do have 5 cards in hand at this point though, so I was expecting there to be a counter there of some sort, but you know, it's better to kind of try to put that pressure on them and get rid of the resources as soon as possible, knowing what I have in my hand. So we're going to go ahead and pass turn on to them, at which point I honestly don't remember what they do. The second Yamato comes down, they tap the Queen, so I'm down to 1 blocker, which does suck, but I have plenty of 2Ks in hand, and I also kept 4 Dawn available for the Thunder Bagao and the Impact Wave. I was smart in that sense. So They have the 7K Yamato coming at my leader. I believe I block here. Or do I? I don't remember. I know I shouldn't impact wave because then I don't get it off. Okay, so I just block instead of using Dawn resources and stuff, because then that gives them the chance. That's right, that was my thought process here, is if I go ahead and block, then they may choose to, instead of push for my leader, go ahead and clear my board since both blockers are rested, which could buy me enough time to make a big push in the next turn. I think at this point they kind of realize that if they let the blockers stay, next turn is going to be a little bit of an issue for them, possibly. So they just try to poke to get that life. At which point, even with 5 Dawn left, it's kind of like, I have plenty of counters and events in my hand. So we go into our turn. The time's finally come. We go 10 drop Kuzan. It did kind of suck that they had 2 Yamatos on the field. If I remember correctly, this is where I popped Zephyr. No, I couldn't because it's a. Oh, I could. It's Kuzan. I should have used the Zephyr ability to get rid of the Yamato, I believe. But I'm also trying to make them get rid of resources. I think that was my thought process there, was get rid of whatever counter they may have in the hand. And from there... No, I didn't use the ability. Okay. I should have used the ability there and got rid of the Yamato. Interesting. Anyways, I guess we passed turn. Back over to the Sanji player. Watching back this footage, I see a lot of things I could have done very differently that could have swung this game to an ending point a lot sooner. I'm in a tough position here because 10 drop Kuzan used all of my Dawn resources. Though I do have 2 blockers and I do have ways to keep them, I decide it's better to save the resources to protect my life if possible. And at this point all they have is Sanji, but they do have a stack of Dawns which they utilize some to try to go in. I guess they're trying to get me to use up my resources before they make a big play, but then they just pass turn. So at this point I'm assuming they have events in the hand, things of that nature. I am debating whether or not I commit to 2 of the big boys on board or not, though with the only thing really being the worry here would be events. With the big bodies I have on board, don't remember. I think I decide to go ahead and attack before I make plays, which is always the better choice to make because you can make a more solid decision after they've used up resources on what to actually set up to block during their turn or to use for your next turn. But I definitely had a bit of a thought process here. Oh, I remember what this was. I forgot the Kuzan already reduced Yamato, so I added the 4. I added the 4 to Sengoku to make it big enough to push like this, because I wanted to reduce the cost of Yamato. And like a fool, I completely misplayed. I go for the Borsellino. I play the Borsellino, and because my whole thing was I wanted to use Zephyr's effect here. It's late game, and I was hoping to get rid of their resources. And I remember realizing that the Yamato was already reduced, and I felt like a fool Because if I remember correctly, I'm going to go in for game here. But because I didn't have the 4 extra Dawn to use for power, they counter. So I'm only at 9k, so it only takes, well, it takes 3 counters, but yeah, I was waiting because I'm confused what's going on. So at this point, we were literally just playing a big waiting game. I don't know if they had something come up on their end or they're really putting a lot of thought behind it. But yeah, the 4 on Sengoku was a huge misplay on my part. Kind of fumbled the bag there for sure. I first just was not thinking about Kuzan because I'm so used. That's right, they had the Love Beam. And then they got rid of the Izo, so they're back down to 3. At this point, I'm just kind of like, okay. Wonderful. So, I think I chose not to do the Zephyr here because I have the other 10 drop Kuzan, so next turn I could go into it again. But they had another Yamato, so the Borsellino gets tapped. They try to go in. I have a couple of counters on hand. I can't block. I think I might take the hit here. No, I don't. Okay. So they have 4 Dawn left. The Yamato just came down this turn. That's right. So they can't do anything with it yet. I think they're going to stack on the Sanji. That was my thought process. If I counter, because they could stack up on the Sanji, and then I wouldn't be able to have enough. I go ahead and counter there. They can't do anything with the other Yamato. They go in with the Sanji. I resolve it. Go ahead and get something to my hand. And then they concede because from there I would have had game. So, with that being said, those were the matches of Black and Purple Zephyr versus Green and Blue Sanji. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you enjoyed this type of content. I believe before this one there is a Red and Black Garp match. I played against a Red Zoro deck, and that one should have been the video that went up before this one, and that was commentary during the game. So let me know down below what you prefer, if you prefer the compilations, if you prefer the during game commentary, or if you prefer the post game commentary like this. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe because we will be pushing the One Piece content a little bit heavier. The pack openings for TCG stuff will still be happening. I really appreciate all the support. These One Piece videos seem to be something that everyone really likes, and I really enjoy making them. So until next time, I will see you later. Peace.